Now, joining me to talk about this extraordinary article in the Times and whether it had authorisation from Number 10 and just how much mess and trouble this government may be in is David Maddox, political editor of The Express Online. David, good evening. Welcome back to the show. Tell us, how did this all happen? Was the article approved by Number 10, not approved by Number 10? How much trouble do you think she might be in?
So, hi again, Nigel. It's always a joy to be on the show. I have to say that my belief is that the Prime Minister himself saw it. Whether the officials who feel that they need to approve these things got to see it is another question. It seems that they didn't, and it appears that some edits that they asked for were ignored by by Suella's office or by the Home Office. So, you know, there is potential that she could be in trouble. My feeling is that had he going to sack her over it, he'd have sacked her this morning when the full steam was up. So we'll see. It may be a reshuffle next week, but after talking to a few people, I've just filed a piece which suggests that that could be the end of Sunak himself if he tries to do that.
Yeah, but the idea that Sunak would sack her this morning would mean that there was a smack of firm leadership and decisive leadership. So that was always going to be pretty unlikely, David. In my view, things just don't seem to work like that under the Sunak premiership, or indeed, actually, many of the premierships the Tories have had over the last 13 years. But what interests me, I mean, you know, you are a veteran of the Express newspaper group. You know where the centre of gravity is with your online and print readers. I would have thought most Express people would be rather like that Telegraph poll and would say, actually, she's right to say these things.
Well, I think we're running our own poll, which is even bigger in its gap from what I last saw. I mean, Suella, as far as Express readers, I think you're right, as far as most of the country speaks the truth on these matters and says what most people are thinking. She speaks from her heart. I think she genuinely believes these things too. She's got a very good instinct for the common man, if you like, which seems to be devoid on most of the rest of the Tory benches and the Labour benches, for that matter. So, you know, but there's more to it than this, isn't there? Because, you know, we know that the Sunak leadership's coming to an end, whether it's before or after an election, probably after. This is her pitch. This is her saying this is where the leadership battle is going to be fought. Her squaring off the right of the party and hoping that's enough to get her over the line. Yeah,
the right of the parliamentary party, but actually the centre ground of public opinion outside of the confines of Westminster. David Maddox, as ever, thank you for joining me on the programme. I wonder whether she actually wants to get sacked. That she might be able to say after they lose the next election, of course, I was forced out for standing up and saying what most Conservative voters genuinely believe. Who knows? Joining me is Clarke Smith, Conservative Member of Parliament for Bassett Law. Brendan, it has been, I put it to you, a pretty dismal week for the government. A King's speech that was a complete dud. And now a Home Secretary and Number 10 just not communicating or working with each other.
I think so much is being overblown as well at the moment, Nigel, and having read that Times article, and really I think the Home Secretary just stated the obvious, really, and we've seen all of these things going on, as you've mentioned, BLM, Yvette Cooper's there with the faux outrage already, yet she was very critical of operational things with the police, with the Sarah Everard vigil, of course, and if there was trouble that on Armistice Day or on Remembrance Sunday, I'm pretty sure they'd be jumping up in the Commons first thing with an urgent question, expecting the Home Secretary or the government to be held to account with that. So for the Home Secretary to actually come out and say, you know, I actually want to have a police force that's accountable, we respect them, they do a great job, but at the same time, you know, there's certain expectations that we have. So she's just doing her job there. There'll be people who don't like her language that she uses. Now, I don't have a problem with that language. It's the language I use. It's the language my constituents use. And most of the country, I think, agree with her on this. So I think there's a little more at play here, really, than is actually meets the eye.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan, look, I'm sure if you took me around Bassett Law, you know, tomorrow morning and we met ordinary folk going about their business, you know, I'm absolutely certain that the vast majority would say, yeah, she's absolutely right. The police are actually being biased in terms of the way they're handling all of this. But the problem is the Conservative Party and many, many of your colleagues with whom you sit on those green benches actually are centrists, actually are social democrats, really aren't concerned about immigration numbers, aren't bothered about any of these things, and are themselves politically correct members of the establishment. Her problem isn't you, the people in Bassett Law. Her problem is your party.
I mean, in terms of bias, I'm not so sure it's police bias as it's a fairness issue, and people will see things that are getting banned with things that aren't because they're a bigger group or they're more violent and so on, and people don't find that fair. Now, in terms of convincing colleagues and other parliamentarians and so on, as you know, Nigel, we're a very broad church at times, and it's shifting that centre of gravity. And of course, party members don't always have the same views as those of us in Westminster. Now, I always think I've got a responsibility to my constituents, but party members as well, to make sure that we have that discussion and we're robust about it and we're doing what it says on the tin. And really, you know, we want to celebrate you know, what's great about this country. We want to pay our respect to Armistice Day on Remembrance Sunday without these yobs going through with, yeah, I would say they are hate marches. And some people don't like that terminology. Some people may have a problem with that. But then what I'd also say is if you're going to turn up at one of these marches and you've got people with socialist worker placards and things supporting Hamas and making comments about Israel or Jewish people and so on, and there are some good people going to those marches. But if you lie with dogs, you get fleas, and you're going to be associated with the people you march with. And if you don't like that, my suggestion is protest in a more constructive way. And I've been saying the same thing to colleagues.
Well, no, I fully understand that. But again, we've had indecisiveness from the Met, almost nothing from the Mayor of London, and the government, frankly, not saying very much. Brendan Clarke Smith, you know, we talked there about the centre of gravity of your party, and you said it's a broad church. But I put it to you, you're a broad church with no faith. What actually is the Conservative Party? I mean, at the end of this week, just give me one thing that the Conservative Party stands for that all wings of the parliamentary party believe in. And don't say beating Labour.
OK, well, I joined the party because I believe in choice, and choice is the word I always used. And I think giving that choice to people, making sure that they are in control of their own lives is something that generally I think most people on those benches would agree with. Now, we had different views on Brexit. We may have different views on various other things, but that's something that I hope that we can all agree on. And I'd say a Labour government restricts that choice. They want more power for the state. They want more power over people's lives. And we've got to convince people that actually we're going to improve people's lives. Now, next week, of course, we're going to have the Rwanda ruling that's going to be coming here. So I think there's a little bit of a panic about that as well. So I think that may also have something to do with the media for all today. But again, people will talk about the ministerial code with Suella Braverman and that she should be fired for X, Y, Z. She's not disagreed on any policy, of course, whereas Labour Party, one of their front benches gone over their ceasefire policy. They've got more than a dozen or so are completely insubordinate. And I think they want to divert from that, Nigel.
Brendan Clarke Smith, as ever, thank you for joining me on the programme.